Hi everyone, I'm Lance. Today we are at chapter 8 of a study of Hebrews. Just a review of chapter 7. And chapter 7 was a long one, quite a long one, over 20 odd verses to explain. So just a brief review here, as brief as I can. In chapter 7, the writer explained the role and character of Melchizedek, a priest of the Most High God, a king of righteousness, a king of peace, who has no mother, no father, no genealogy, no beginning of days, and no end of life. The writer states that Abraham gave him a tenth of the plunder that he captured from the slaughter of the kings, and Melchizedek blessed Abraham. The writer showed that the same Melchizedek was made like unto, or had the same form of the Son, the God, and he remained a priest continually, perpetually. He presented that Melchizedek was great, and Abraham paid tithes to him, and that tithes were paid also for Israel, because through the sons of Levi, the priesthood, were commanded by law, because though the sons of Levi, the priesthood, were commanded by law to take tithes from their brothers, yet it was already paid for them because they were in the genes of Abraham when he met Melchizedek. The writer, he wrote that this man, Melchizedek, had no descent from Levi, but received tithes from Abraham and still lives, though the priests of Levi died. He narrated that if perfection was by the Levitical priesthood, why would there be the need for another priest to arise according to the order of Melchizedek and not according to the order of Aaron? He stated that the Levi priesthood changed, and as a result, law changed also. He stated that Christ, to the Levi priesthood, Christ, whom this was spoken of, came from another tribe to which Moses spoke nothing about, and were selected based. Let me read it again. He stated that the Levi priesthood changed, and as a result of law change also. He stated that Christ, to whom this is spoken, came from another tribe to which Moses spoke nothing about, and no priests were chosen from the tribe of Judah. He explained that the Levitical priesthood were selected based on a fleshly commandment, but Christ, according to the power of an endless life, because God spoke by the mouth of the prophet, you are a priest into the age according to the order of Melchizedek. The writer narrated that the previous commandment was annulled, set aside, because of its weakness and unprofitableness. He wrote that the law of Moses made nothing perfect, but the bringing in of a better hope made all things perfect. He stated that this was done by an oath that brought in Jesus with surety of a better covenant. He stated that those who were made priests under the Levitical priesthood died, but Christ has a permanent priesthood into the age. Now there's more that was said, of which I cut short. And, may I say, please watch and listen to the video of chapter 7 of Hebrews. Yes, it is stated, if you find the video, it will state chapter 7. Yes, and it should be correct. Yeah, okay. Now, there's something I wanted to say, before we go on to chapter 8. There's some things that were said here regarding the priesthood, of a fleshly. Yes, it says here, the Levitical priesthood were selected based on a fleshly commandment. Now, my understanding here regarding this fleshly commandment is not so much, talking about flesh as of the flesh of human, but I believe what he was talking about, because of the sacrifices of the animal's flesh, that was offered up for sins, showing how weak it was. You see, but because we know that the offering up of Christ, the blood of Christ, was spiritual, more heavenly. Yes, it was heavenly. Although it happened physically and naturally to Christ, yet it was heavenly. So this is the difference here that I wanted was to say regarding the fleshly commandment. Yes. Okay. All right. This chapter is a short one. I think it's just only about 12 or 13 verses. Yes. So let's go there. Okay. Chapter 8. Let's bring up chapter 8. Okay. So here we go. So the writer here, verse 1, decide to make a summary of what has been said so far. I reckon he's making a summary either of chapter 7 or of chapter 1 to chapter 7. Yes. So here we go. He's saying here, and a summary for the things being said. We have such a high priest who sat down. You hear that? Here is active indicative. He's sitting down. Yeah. At the right, up to the throne, to the majesty in the heavens. Yes. Now, let me read this another way based upon how translations put it. And a summary for the things being said. We have such a high priest who sat down at the right hand of the throne of the majesty in the heavens. This is how translation put it. But for me here, looking through what the Greek is saying, it is saying more or less the same. But we're off. There's no off in it. It's a definite article. But these translation put an off in, I believe, for the purpose of the English, and sometimes it's a little bit misleading because it misses a great point, of what the writer actually is saying. So we got to watch out for that sometimes, and then sometimes he use an off, he use an in. The in is correct here, but when it is an ice, sometimes it's into. It's meaning into. Okay, that's verse 1 as we explain, each verse as we read them. Okay, so let's go on to verse 2. So he's saying that Christ, is sat down, and he used a pause here. So at the time of his writing, Christ had already been made a high priest and was sitting down, yeah, at the right hand of the throne, yeah, of the majesty, yes, in the heavens. So two priesthood was operating at the time. I can conclude that, or we can conclude that there are two priests. There was one earthly that was operating, and the one when Christ went there as high priest, the high that was operating in the heaven. Yes, so he was high priest in heaven. This is what the writer is saying. Yes, he's high priest in heaven. Yes. Okay, so he was carrying out the duty for those converts who come in believing in him. Because as far as we are concerned, he had no more anything to do with the Mosaic law and that old priesthood, yeah, earthly. He died to that, and he ascended to the real. He died to the shadow. Yeah, because that was the shadow. I'm still at verse 1 here. It's just something I'm led to explain. Because of what it says, because there's so much in one verse, but I've gone through them briefly. Yes, because we'll take up so much time. But what it is said here in this one verse, that Christ sat down. So we know that the priesthood, yeah, of Christ was operating from heaven. And I may go a little further because we have all come through it from chapter 1, that the kingdom, tabernacle, and priesthood was already prepared and ready in the heaven to come down. It was already in the heaven to come down. It was just waiting on what can I say, the time, or the appointed time for it to come down. But it was operating from there because believers were being saved, yes, and their sins were cleansed through the blood of Christ. Yes, this don't happen at a later date. It was happening at the time. So he was operating as priest in the heaven, because the writer put the aorist active indicative here that he sat down. He went up as a high priest, yeah, sitting at the right hand of the majesty in the heaven as a high priest. Yeah, so it wouldn't just be sitting there and doing nothing. Okay, so let's just give a clear understanding of that. So someone would ask the question then, what was the necessity of the priesthood on earth still operating at the time? And that's a good question, because that's a question I myself could ask. What was the necessity? Yes. So because offering up of all that the writer said, especially in chapter 7, that the law made nothing perfect. Yes. Absolutely nothing perfect. Yes. And more things were said, which tells us that, many offerings the high priests offer, which is said could never make them perfect. You see, so what presently then, yeah, if that's the case, then why was it still in operation? Yeah. So, well, let me say this. From God's perspective, it's not so much that it was in any operation. Yes, it was so much that the prophecies, yeah, under Moses or under the law, the prophets prophesied. Yes. So most of the prophecies that were prophesied, yes, were yet to be fulfilled. And the law was to remain as evidence of those unfulfilled prophecies. Yes, so it was there still, and were they still standing, and they were still offering up, yeah, which I believe at that time those offering up were of no effect, because this is what the Hebrew writer here is saying. It could make nothing perfect. Yes, the law, if we, if we could go back to it a little bit here, just to explain this, because this chapter is very small, but, it's a very short one. So, the writer said it here. He said it in several places, in a few places he said it, that the law made nothing perfect. Yes. Now, I didn't underline, because I didn't plan to really talk about this, but it just came up, it's like something just dropped in my spirit to just say something about it. Yeah. Because here in verse 11 of chapter 7, he asked, if indeed then perfection was through the Levitical priesthood, for the people by it had received law, what yet then there was need, according to the order of Melchizedek, for another priest to arise, and not according to the order of Aaron. So you see, here are the questions going around here. Yeah. For the priesthood being changed out from necessity, also law, a change came to be. A change came to be the law. So what? So you see, what he's actually saying here was change. So the question, why was it still in operation? Yes, and I'm saying that based on my understanding, it could only be, that because of the prophecies that were prophesied through, because all the prophets prophesied under the law. Yes, and it remained as evidence until the appointed time. Yeah. The writer said here that it was annulled, set aside. Who set it aside? God, not them. They were still using it, but God had it set aside. So the writer here was telling you what God done presently, what had been done at the time presently, that God had set that aside, annulled it and set it aside. Yes, and so we're going to see some more about this. Yes, so he went on to say, for it's very clear out of Judah, yeah, the Lord of us rose up, as to which tribe nothing concerning priesthood Moses spoke. You see, so let us go on, because there's much to this. Yeah. So let us go on to chapter 8. So at chapter 8, we have just spoken about verse 1, and the question was, why was the law still in operation at the time? And it was because of unfulfilled prophecies that had to be fulfilled. Yes. Sorry, bear me a minute here. Here, I didn't expect all this, I certainly didn't expect all this. Sorry, these things happen. So just silent it as much as I can. Okay, I completely try to, put away all this, and that came up. Okay, let's go on to verse 2. Okay, it goes on to say, of the whole, it goes on, it continued about Christ, in who a high priest sat down at the majesty, at the throne, the right hand of the throne of the majesty in the heavens. Yes, and then it goes on to say, of the holy places. Now, it used the word here, holy places, but this word here is actually saying the most holy place. It's not so much as it was different places. It was just one most holy place, because this could call for an explanation again, because the holy places, that you got two places on the earthly, in the earthly tabernacle. You got the holy place, and then you got the most holy place. So when he said the holy place is here, it's made one, because he's actually saying that the holy place and the most holy place was made one. So it's saying that Christ, yeah, a minister of the holy places this is in heaven, and the true tent or tabernacle, yeah, which the Lord pitched and not man. So you see here, this is what I'm saying to you, it's finished, because again, the pitched here is an aorist active indicative. It's done and dusted. All done and dusted. Yes, it's done and not man. Yes, so let's go on to verse 3. For every high priest, in order to offer both gifts and sacrifices, is appointed. Therefore, it was necessary to have something also for this man, which he could offer. Yes. So let's go on. It's saying here, Christ was offering up. Yes. So Christ had to offer up. He was there as a mediator between God and man. Yes. So the high priesthood, yes, was operating in the heaven. Yes, waiting for the appointed time to come down. Yes. Okay, let's go on. For if indeed he was on earth, here we go, he would never be a priest, there being the priests, those offering according to the law, the gifts. You see? So what he's saying, so he's actually saying, and it's just what I said, his priesthood was operating in the heaven, while the priesthood here was still operating on the earth. Yes. And, it says something here that is very, very, it makes me want to, correct myself with what I said, because it's like the writer acknowledged the operating of the priesthood, or the offerings of the priesthood earthly, based upon what he said here. For hear what he said. For if indeed he was on earth, he would never be a priest. Yes. There being the priests, those offering according to the law, the gifts. Yeah. So the Levitical priesthood was still running to the age as well. Yes. So the law and the Levitical priesthood was still operating unto the age on earth, unto the until the end, or of the Mosaic law. Yeah. So it seems here maybe it was legal, because like I said, the question was asked, why was there need then? Because of the things that the writer said. It was set aside. So from God's perspective, that just had to run its age, but it's not true anymore that sins were cleansed. Couldn't be. It could not be. And it's not true anymore. Yes. That anyone could come to God. So if we look at this again here, because, this here, verse 4, raise some questions. So the holy place was in the tabernacle, where you got the 24 courses of priests. Yeah. And then you got the most holy place, where you got the high priest who goes in. Yes. So They were still going in, lighting the lamps and so on, and, and doing their duty. Yes, and the high priest was still offering up sin for his sin and for the sins of the people. Was that still accepted with God? Maybe, if it was running to its age, to the end of the age, maybe it was still accepted. So I just, when it comes to God's word, I don't want to be erroneous in any way. I don't want to make no mistake whatsoever. If I've done a video and it's full of mistake, I erase it. Yes, I erase it and do it over. Yes. So I'm just saying here that it's making me think here, based upon what the writer said, that we're going to have to be careful with some of what's being said that we read previously, because it seems as if the law here and the practice, and I mean the Mosaic law and the earthly, kingdom priesthood tabernacle, had to run and continue to the age, and it seems as if it was accepted by God. Because the writer here said that if Christ was on earth, he wouldn't be a priest. Yes. Or let me, there's something more just pop in my spirit, of which the writer said in chapter 7. He said that Christ's priesthood came from Judah, and Moses spoke nothing about a tribe. Yes, so maybe that's what he meant. Maybe that's what it meant. I mean, I've gone into so much here, but maybe I'm thinking again that, but he's saying here that for if indeed he was on earth, he would never be a priest. There being the priests, those offering according to the law, the gifts. You see? And I believe that, maybe what the writer means here was because Moses spoke up according to the order that Moses gave, and Moses never see no priest coming through any other tribes. Yeah, it was just the Levite tribe that all the priests were appointed from to the age. So maybe that's what the writer means here. So let me not read too deep into it, because let me just stick with what the writer said. So Christ, if I stick with what the writer said, if Christ was on earth, because he was from the tribe of Judah, and no one from that tribe ever was selected to serve as priest or high priest. Yes, so he would never be a priest, since that priesthood was still operating. He would never be, right? And the writer had said everything regarding to that. So I think that's the line of reasoning, based upon what the writer is saying, and not so much the line of, the priesthood still had to run to its age. Maybe they were continuing it because the law, yes, had a whole lot of prophecies tied up in it to the age. And the temple had still existed. Yes. So maybe that's the reason. Okay. So much said about that. Let's go on to verse 5. Who, an example and a shadow, serve to the heavenly. Okay. So hear this. So what he's actually saying, that the earthly priesthood, verse 5 here, was a shadow of the heavenly. You see? So if we talk about shadow, if you see my shadow and you follow my shadow, it will lead you to me, the substance. Yes. If you see the shadow of anything and you follow the shadow, it will lead you to the substance. So what he's actually saying here, that the priesthood, the earthly priesthood, was a tabernacle as well, was a shadow of the heavenly. Yeah. As was warned Moses, being about to complete the tabernacle, God said to him, "For see, says God, you make all things according to the pattern or the example, the one having been shown to you in the mount or on the mount. You see, so the writer here is saying that the earthly priesthood was a shadow of the heavenly. Yes. Did he say was? Hang on, let me look here. Yeah. Who, an example, a shadow serve to the heavenly. This is the earthly priesthood. As, okay, so he's actually saying at the time, not that he's saying it was, he's saying it is. Yeah. A shadow of the heavenly one. Yeah. So the earthly one, like I said, and the heavenly one was operating. Yes. Okay, let's go on. It's a bit complex there, a bit complex. But the Lord said here in verse 5 to Moses, see that you make all things after the pattern that I have been shown to you on the mount or in the mount. All right, let's go on to verse 6. But now a more excellent he has obtained. Look here. All right. But now, let me read that again. Verse 6. But now a more excellent ministry he has obtained. Look here. He has obtained is a perfect indicative active. It's saying it's complete. So his ministry was going on in the heaven. It was going on because the perfect is telling you if something's been done in the past. It's done and it's completed. Done, all done and dusted. Yes. As also of a better, is the mediator of a better covenant. Yes. He also, this is added to what's been done. He's also the mediator of a better covenant. Yes. Which has been established. Hear this, that's perfect again, indicative. On better promises, it's done. Done, it's in the heaven, done, ready to come down. It's operating, it's been going on. Because there were believers being saved. And who? The priests. Who were the priests there? The ones who were preaching the gospels and bringing the souls in. Yes. So this is what he's saying. Better covenant was established. It's all done and dusted in the heaven, waiting to come down. And this is straightforward to understand. Yes, as we read. So, verse 7. For if the first covenant had been, hear this now, faultless. So he used here an imperfect indicative. Yes. In other words, he's saying, he's bringing it from the past to the present to say that it was faultless. Yes, it had fault in the past, and it still had fault at the present time of his writing. Yeah. He said, not a second would not ever would have been sought. A place for a second would have never been sought. Here again, he used the imperfect indicative. You see? So he's actually saying in past and in the present, yes, if the first covenant was faultless, a second would have never been sought. So God found fault with them. Let's go on to verse 8. For finding fault, here we go, with them, he says, behold, the days are coming, said the Lord. Now you watch the verbs here, because you can make a mistake in explaining the verbs here wrongly. Yeah, because the writer here is quoting or citing exactly. The writer is citing the scriptures, and he's word for word. So the verbs that are in it are not talking of a future, yeah, it's talking about something that was spoken long time ago, yeah, for the future that he is in now, presently. Yes. Right. So it's not talking about from writing of the writer to a future ahead. It's talking about from the time when it was written. Yeah. So that's why he used here, because I'm coming to some verbs here. Yes. He's saying, for finding fault with them, he says, behold, the days are coming. Yes. Yeah. Present indicative. Yes. So what is acting? The writer is saying this is the present age. God said this, but this was the present age, says the Lord. And I will conclude with. So you see, use here a future indicative. For the house of Israel and for the house of Judah, a new covenant. You see? So here you go. He's quoting Jeremiah 31. He's citing Jeremiah 31. And, and he's using, he's citing it word for word. You see? So where you see the future, indicative, it's not talking about a future from the time the writer is writing. It's talking about the future from the time it was spoken in Jeremiah to presently where they are at the moment. Yes. Okay. Verse 9. Not according to the covenant which I made with the fathers of them in the day having taken hold of the hand of them and lead them out from the land Egypt, because they did not continue, here is active indicative, in my covenant, and I did not, again, same here is active indicative, regard them, says the Lord. Yeah, verse 10. For this, the covenant which I will continue. Yes, he's still quoting Jeremiah 31. With the house of Israel, after the days, those, said the Lord, giving the law, my laws into the mind of them, and on the hearts of them I will write them, and will be to them for God, and they will be to me for a people. Yes, it goes on here. And look here, before we finish here, let us go back over this here. If you notice here, if we go back to verse 8, yes, it's something here I want to point out. We're supposed to be at verse 11, but let's just have a look here at verse 8. I should have explained a bit more about this. For finding fault with them, he says, behold, the days are coming, says the Lord, and I will conclude with the house of Israel and for the house of Judah a covenant new. I don't know why I put for there, but let's accept it. So if you notice here, you hear what he says? He said he will conclude, yes, with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah a new covenant. So where do we come in? The question, let's ask the question here, because some of those people who claim they are, Israelite or whatever they call themselves and what they believe in, and some of the IO people, who claim that this was an Israel thing only. And sometimes they have these scriptures to, because they got a big misunderstanding, they have these scriptures to use to say, look here, it's clear, it's telling you that the covenant is made between Israel and Judah. Specifically, that's what it says. And specifically, that's what it says. But we have to look elsewhere where the scripture said, so where do we come in? We come into what's theirs. We have to go back to Isaiah 65, 66. Yes. And other places in the scripture where God, the prophets told them, God spoke through the prophet telling them that the nations will come to your light. You see? So it's either we accept or reject. If we want life and immortality, we have to come to their light. Yes, and if you're going to exclude yourself and don't believe that you can have life and immortality through them, if you come to their light, and you turn around and say, no, it was for Israel only, and not for us. Yeah, then there you go. You put yourself out. Yeah. So God here had promised Israel, he specifically told them in Exodus that he would make them a kingdom of priests. Yes, he would choose them, a peculiar people above all the nations of the earth. Yes, let me say, over all the nations of the earth, he chose them specifically to make them a kingdom of priests, to establish the kingdom priesthood tabernacle, yet that man had fallen from through Adam, and to bring back man in fellowship with God, that man may live in the presence of God, sinless. Yes. So this is what God was doing here. This is all of what being done here, that people don't understand. Yes, that's why I call it, I said it all the time, I'm pointing out that when you're talking about the all things, it's talking about the kingdom priesthood tabernacle. You cannot, this is what theologians have done. They have spread it internationally, worldwide, to every nation, kingdom, language, and tongue, where it doesn't apply. You got to know where it applies and where it doesn't apply. Yeah. So when God was dealing with the judgment and his coming, you got to understand that the coming was sectional. Yes, the habitable land was Israel. Why habitable? Where the 12 tribes, that's where they habitated. When God bring them out, they habitate Israel, all the land of Israel. That was the habitable land, not the world. The translation made a mistake there. And I believe it was a honest mistake. I don't believe it was a deliberate mistake. Yes, because it spoke about, the same writer here spoke about two habitable land, one habitable land earthly, and he said there was a habitable land coming. Yes. And what was that? The New Jerusalem. Yes. So the focus there was based specifically upon Israel and Judah, which would come to this. Yes. And then the nations now would be brought in. If we want life and immortality, the nations will be brought in to his light. Yes. And this is what the writer is saying here. Yes. So I just wanted to clear that up, just in case, people come across these Israel-only people and they're making it out here. We got to understand, and we got to read, the line by line, word by word, and read with understanding. That this is how God chose to do it, and you cannot put it beyond where God has done it and established it. So we have to come to their light to see. They are the priests who their teachings, yes, bring us to this light, yes, and bring us in to the kingdom. Yes, okay, or into the New Jerusalem. Okay, let us go on back to verse 11 now, where we're at. And it goes, and so the Lord is saying that he will establish a new covenant. Yes, and what he's saying now, that they shall surely not teach each one his neighbor and each one his brother, saying, know the Lord, for all they shall know me. Yes. from the least of them to the greatest of them. It continues. For I will be merciful to their unrighteous deeds, and to their sins, and to the lawless deeds, I surely will not remember. Still. Yes. So this is what he's saying. Yes. Then he goes on. He goes on to say in verse 13. Yes. Wait a minute here. Least to the greatest. Yes. So if we read again. No, let's go back here to verse 10. Yeah. Just to see the point, the law that is made there. For this is the covenant which I will covenant with the house of Israel after those days, saith the Lord, given laws, my laws, into the mind of them. You hear what he said? The laws will be given into the mind of them, and on their hearts, I will write them, and will be to them for God. Yes, and they will be to me for a people. You see here? So what does it tell you here? Writing the laws of me, he said, in the mind of them, and he write them in their hearts. What is he saying to us? It's the scriptures that we have. My understanding here is the scriptures that we have, because we use our heart and mind, yes, to study. Yes, and this is where we get knowledge. So we got the scriptures. So when we read the scriptures, it's written in our heart because we read it. We're going to have to read to know this. And that's why God has prepared, this scripture. I believe God has preserved it throughout the centuries, because this is his word and it will continue perpetually. If you want to find life and immortality, if you want to have it, yes, you will have to search the scriptures. Yes, you will have to read and study the scriptures, because this is how it be written in your heart and in your mind. And this is how it will be given in your mind. Yes, and this is how you'll have to know it. Yes, so let's go on to verse 13. I just wanted to explain that a little bit. And it goes, in order to say a new covenant, he has made grown old the first, and the one being made to grow old. Yes, now he's looking here we're back. He said here, has made grow old. Where he said here, has made grow old. It's a perfect indicative. Yes, so he's actually saying it's completed, it's old. The writer had said, if we go back to chapter 7, it was set aside. Yes, so from the heavenly perspective, God wasn't using that no more. This is what he's telling. From the heavenly perspective, where Christ now was operating as high priest. Yes, for the believers that were converted and brought in, that was set aside. Yes, and he goes on here to say, being made to grow old. Yes, present, yeah, participle. Yes, so it's actually saying that it's been made to grow old. In other words, it's got to the point where it's worn, yes, and it's not going to be used anymore. Yeah? And becoming old is near to vanishing away. So what was left of it to be fulfilled? That's what I'm saying. The practicing of it was finished. But the prophecies that was wrapped up and tied up in it was still pending completion. And that's all it is saying here. It cannot contradict what it says here. It would be of no relevance then for Christ if it still had was to run, to bring souls in, because it would make no sense. It would be a confusion here. You see, so we got to understand that this for what part of the law continued to the age. The part of the Mosaic law, the old covenant, that continued to the age which came under the practicing of the priesthood, or which the priesthood established through Moses. Yes, were continuing, but it was not continuing with the sacrifices that was offered up for sin anymore, because it would be a contradiction. The writer had already told that practicing made nothing perfect, but Christ, the bringing in of a new covenant, make things perfect. So we got to understand what part of the law was in continuation. Yes, it was not the priest, the Levitical priest would practicing, yes, and the high priest going into the most holy place and making atonement and so on and so on, after Christ had already done that and ascended and is now operating as a high priest in the heaven. That would be a contradiction of the writing here. And it's not a contradiction. So we got to use common sense here to understand that what was left of the old covenant was the prophecies, yes, by the prophets under the law that had to be completed. Yeah. So it had to remain as evidence until all those are complete. Yes, at the end of the age. Yes. Okay. I hope we have come to the end of chapter 8. I hope I've been of help to someone who didn't clearly understand. Yes, the chapter 8. We will go on to chapter 9 in our next presentation. Yes. Thanks for watching. One love.